Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing the top 10 books you need to read before the end of the year. Alright guys, so I asked over on my Instagram, what book do you need to read before the end of the year? So this could be a book that either hasn't come out yet, or a book that was pretty popular that you haven't had a chance to pick up. So this is pretty much a list of just amazing books that you guys are all loving. Now there is a mix of fantasy romance and contemporary romance. I will say this list is mostly fantasy romance, but there are a few contemporaries thrown in there. And I am so excited to talk about these books with you guys. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about these books. So I'm going to start off with the books that haven't released yet at the time I am filming this video. I'm actually pretty sure a couple of these books are going to be released the day before this video posts, so some of these books might be out by the time you see this. But first up, a lot of you said Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the sequel to Fourth Wing, and I am so excited. So if you read Fourth Wing and you don't have time to do a reread, I do have a recap video that I will leave in the cards and the description. But Fourth Wing is following Violet Sorrengail, and she has grown up her entire life believing that she is going to become a scribe, and instead she ends up having to attend the Riders Quadrant, which is essentially a dragon rider university where different cadets will compete against each other in the hopes of eventually bonding with the dragon and gaining some magical abilities. So I loved Fourth Wing so much, and I am so excited to pick up Iron Flame. I'm pretty sure it releases on November 6th, and it should be really good. And the next most popular response was A Fire in the Flesh, which is the third book in the Flesh and Fire series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is the prequel series to the From Blood and Ash series, also by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So I am absolutely loving this prequel series. Nyktos and Seraphina are perfection. If you are unfamiliar with the prequel series, without giving away spoilers, we are following Seraphina, who has grown up as the maiden, and she believes she is going to be the consort to Nyktos, the god of death. However, when she comes of age, Nyktos ends up rejecting her, so Seraphina pretty much is just kind of cast out by her family. She is trying to survive. I think it's her cousin who's about to become king, and he's absolutely evil. Anyway, something ends up happening. Nyktos shows back up and changes his mind and decides that he is going to take Seraphina as his consort, and the story goes from there. So I am very intrigued on what is going to happen in A Fire in the Flesh. I will say A Light in the Flame was probably my least favorite out of all of the books that have come out in the prequel series and the From Blood and Ash series, but the ending kind of made up for it, so I'm hoping A Fire in the Flesh is just absolutely amazing. And another one a lot of you said you're really excited about is Gold by Raven Kennedy. This was supposed to be the final book in the Plated Prisoner series. However, Raven Kennedy recently announced that it is no longer going to be the last book, which makes a lot of sense. If you read the book that recently released, I think it's the fourth book, the ending of that book just leaves so many questions unanswered, and I was kind of worried how she was going to wrap that all up in one book. So I'm not really surprised that she's going to make the series a little bit longer. Now, I will say I'm hoping that she only adds like one or two books and we don't kind of do what we did with Zodiac Academy, where we just kept adding book after book after book and making a series go on probably longer than it should have. But anyway, I love the Plated Prisoner series. It's one of my favorite series. I actually have a reading vlog of me reading it for the first time that I will leave in the cards and the description. But if you are unfamiliar with the Plated Prisoner series, the first book is Gild, and Gild is following Aren, and she is the pet of King Midas. King Midas being similar to the original tale, where everything he touches turns to gold. So he has gold-touched Aren and essentially keeps her as this like prize in the middle of his castle and likes to show her off. Now, Aren has absolutely no autonomy. All she cares about is being safe and keeping Midas happy until something ends up happening. She has to leave her cage and things progress from there. So I will say in the first book, you are going to be unbelievably frustrated with the main character, but I think the beauty of this series is her growth throughout the series. So I cannot wait for Gold. I will probably do a recap video of the entire series right before Gold releases, so look out for that, but I'm so excited to check out the next chapter of this series. And next up is Ruthless Vows, and this is the sequel to Divine Rivals. Now, I did not finish Divine Rivals, I ended up DNFing it. However, I am willing to pick it back up. So if you have read Divine Rivals and you know my reading taste and you think I'll enjoy it, let me know down in the comments below, because I was kind of bored, but I didn't get very far into it. And I feel like so many of my friends love that book that it probably gets really, really good, and I just didn't. I think I DNF'd too soon, is essentially what I'm trying to say. But Divine Rivals, from what I remember, is following this girl there's like a war going on, I believe, between gods, and our main character is writing about it, and she has to compete against another writer, and I think there's eventually a romance between them. Like I said, I did not get far into this book at all. But Ruthless Vows is the sequel to this book, and I believe it is releasing later this year, and a lot of people are very, very excited to check out the sequel. I heard Divine Rivals ends on like a crazy cliffhanger, so yeah, I'm very intrigued, and I probably will end up picking up Divine Rivals in the future, but a lot of you are very excited for Ruthless Vows. And next up is Bookshops and Bonedust, which I'm pretty sure is set in the same world as Legends and Lattes, which was very popular earlier this year. Unfortunately, I haven't picked it up yet, but I've had friends that have read Legends and Lattes and said that it's just very cozy, and it's cozy fantasy, which is the genre that I am very interested in. So Bookshops and Bonedust, I believe, is releasing later this year, and we are following this mercenary who I think gets stuck in a bookshop, and there's a romance between her and somebody else. I'm not exactly sure anything besides that, but I feel like low fantasy is gaining a lot of popularity recently, or like not high stakes fantasy, if that makes any sense. So I'm very intrigued, and will hopefully be picking this up when it releases. And the rest of the books on this list have already released. So first up, a lot of people said they want to read Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, and Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath, which I highly recommend you do prior to the release of CC3, which is going to come out, I think, in the beginning of 2024. Now, I am about to do a reread of House of Sky and Breath, and there will be a recap video of that book prior to the release of CC3. So if you guys want to check that out, that will definitely be coming. But I love Crescent City. I absolutely love Bryce, our main character. If you have not read the first Crescent City book, we are essentially following Bryce, and she lives in the world of Lunathian, and she has a roommate who is a werewolf named Danica, and we're pretty much just following her day-to-day life until a very upsetting event occurs, and Bryce has to solve a murder of someone that she loves. So she ends up teaming up with Hunt Athalar, a fallen angel, and together they have to solve this murder, and it is so good. I will say, if you are a fan of SJM and you haven't read this yet, this is urban fantasy, so it has a very different feel from ACOTAR and Throne of Glass. It took me a little while to get into it, but I did end up loving it, just like all of her other books, so I am so excited for CC3 to finally release. And another book that seems to have gained a lot of popularity recently is One Dark Window. So I read this book when it first released, and I thought it was okay. It is a YA fantasy, and it has a bit of a darker vibe, so perfect to read this time of year. But we're following this girl that when she was younger, she ended up touching a tarot card and absorbed a monster into her body. Now, she has been trying to keep this secret because there is this like system in place that if children become ill, they are killed kind of instantly, because it is possible that if they are ill, they're actually ill with this dark magic, and this dark magic is very volatile. So our main character was ill, her parents kept it a secret, and she thought she kind of got off scot-free, but then she accidentally absorbed a monster into her body. So she doesn't want to die, so she hasn't told anybody there is a monster in her body, but this monster protects her, but also like talks to her, and it's just been kind of tough. So one day while our main character is like walking in the woods, she runs into a highwayman. He discovers her ability, and together they work together to kind of discover the secrets of this dark magic. Also, the highwayman has a like secret identity, and it goes from there. So like I said, when I read this, I thought it was okay. I just don't remember it being a really standout read. I actually had to go back and look at my review to kind of jog my memory of what happened in this book. But a lot of people are reading it right now and loving it. And also, I believe the sequel to One Dark Window either recently released or is about to release. So that might also kind of explain all the popularity. But if that sounds like a book you would enjoy, definitely pick it up. And next up, a lot of you are very excited to read A Fall of Ruin and Wrath, which is the first book in Jennifer L. Armentrout's newest fantasy romance series. So I read this book back in September, and I do think it is a very promising start to a new series. So the story is following Callista, and in Callista's world, the gods have essentially destroyed everything, except for a few big cities, and Callista lives with her best friend. They've been living on the streets just trying to survive. Now, Callista actually is kind of able to see into the future because she has very intense intuition. So this intuition allows her to, one, touch people and kind of see their futures, but also, as long as she follows her intuition, things kind of end up working out for her. So where most of this story kind of like takes place, Callista is the courtesan to a higher noble in this world. And although at first they were intimate, now Callista is really just seen as like the spy for this noble. And one day she's out minding her own business and she comes across a god who is being tortured and she ends up freeing him. Now her intuition is telling her to stay away from this god. He is no good. However, she decides to go against her intuition and kind of spends time with him, and the story progresses from there. So although I did have a few issues with this book, mostly in terms of pacing, and I honestly think it could have been longer, which is not something I say very often with Jennifer L. Armentrout books, I did really enjoy it and cannot wait to read the sequel. And another very popular response was either Serpent and the Wings of Night or Ashes and the Star-Crossed King. So I have read Serpent and the Wings of Night. I gave it 5 stars. I think it is worth all of the hype. I have not read Ashes and the Star-Crossed King, so I am in the same exact boat. I need to read it before the end of the year. Originally, I was waiting for the audiobook to be released, but at the point that I'm filming this, I'm pretty sure the audiobook is already dropped, so I just have to find time. I also think I have to reread Serpent and the Wings of Night because I don't remember everything. But if you're unfamiliar with Serpent and the Wings of Night, we are following Aurelia, who is this human girl that ended up being adopted by the king of the vampires when her entire community was murdered. So this vampire king ends up taking her back to his kingdom, where he raises her as his adoptive daughter. Now, she is living amongst vampires, so obviously it's been a really tough life for Aurelia, and she decides she's gonna enter this tournament to compete to the death, and whoever wins ends up getting a wish from the goddess Nyaxia. So most of Serpent and the Wings of Night is essentially just following Aurelia as she competes in these very dangerous trials. She ends up having to partner with an enemy from another clan in order to survive, and it has a bit of an enemies to lovers vibe. I have heard the second book, Ashes and the Star-Crossed King, is much more romance heavy than the first book, which I'm actually excited for because I feel like there wasn't much of a romance in that first book. But overall, so good, and I cannot wait to read it. And I love the fact that a lot of you are currently reading the Throne of Glass series. I got a lot of answers that were either the last 3 books of that series or Queen of Shadows, Heir of Fire, etc. The entire Throne of Glass series is fantastic. I keep saying every year that I'm going to go and do a reread. I think I need to do a reread where I read like 1 book a month. It's a little intimidating if you go to like binge the entire series because the books are pretty long. But overall, Throne of Glass is my second favorite Sarah J. Maas series and is amazing. We are essentially following Selena Sardathian, and she is an assassin that has been captured and now is going to compete in these gladiator-like trials in order to get her freedom. And that's essentially kind of the plot of the first book. But by the time you get to Kingdom of Ash, you're gonna have so many emotions. So much goes on throughout this book. There are so many amazing characters, so much action, and this is actually the least spicy of all of SJM books, but you will not miss it. The romances are still absolutely epic, and they're just amazing. So if you have not read Throne of Glass yet, you need to. And last up for fantasy romance, we have Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Now, I know very little about this book. I know it is YA fantasy, and it is not set in the Shadowhunter universe, which 90% of these authors' books are set. Now, I never read The Mortal Instruments or the other spin-off series, so I don't know. I'm kind of intrigued. Let me know if you've read this and what you thought of it, just because I want to give this author a shot, but I just feel like Mortal Instruments and all of those books, it's so intimidating. Like, that world is vast at this point. But I am interested in giving this a shot, so let me know what you guys think. And I did have 1 contemporary romance on this list, so Wildfire, and this is by Hannah Grace. This is the same author that wrote Icebreaker, which was unbelievably popular. I believe it's a hockey romance. A lot of my friends read it. It did kind of get mixed reviews. Some of them really loved it, others hated it. And at the time, I didn't read it because I wasn't a big fan of hockey romances. I have since read Home Game by Odette Stone. Highly recommend. Really, really good. So I am a little bit interested in reading Icebreaker, but Wildfire, I believe, is following 2 camp counselors, and I believe they have like a one-night stand that eventually leads to a relationship, and that's really all I know. But the fact that 4 of you said you really wanted to read this book, I'm interested. So yeah, that's another book that I think either is about to release or is releasing really, really soon. And the last book on this list is actually a historical romance. And I do not talk about historical romances on my channel because I very, very rarely read them. I have read a couple like darker historicals, The Highwayman and another one that was really good by Lorraine Heath, but I just don't normally gravitate towards historical romances. But someone said they were excited about this book and it sounds really good. So it's Forever You're a Rogue, and it's following this woman that ends up having a few kids and then her husband passes away, and her relatives, or maybe her husband's relatives, are trying to take custody of the kids. So she has to find a husband, despite the fact that she really doesn't want to get married. So I don't know, it sounds like something I'd be really into. So I might end up picking this up in December. And if there are any other historical romances that you think I would enjoy, please let me know down in the comments below. I do want to give historical romances a shot. I just feel like a few of the ones I've read, I don't know, they've been kind of hard to get into. I did read the entire Bridgerton series, and I thought they were all like okay. I definitely like the show a little bit more, so I'm just kind of nervous. But if there are any historical romances that have like a darker tone or have single parents, let me know and I will definitely pick them up. All right, guys, those are all the books you need to read before the end of the year. I will be posting a video later this month that will have all the books I need to read before the end of the year. There is quite a list. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.